the Ellen situation.
Yeah.
You know, people found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen's actually a bitch. And then we're like, whoa,
Yeah.
I can't believe it. And she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was. My buddy Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a piece of shit. And he was like, she's a mom.
Ellen DeGeneres once danced her way through fame, brushing aside whispers and awkward glances. But when Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld joined forces, the show felt less like light entertainment and more like a public unpacking. One moment, she was America's cheerful, sneaker-loving host. The next, she became the subject of a sharp, humorous critique. What was really hidden beneath that glossy studio surface? Hint: it wasn't just glitter and good vibes. Compared to what came out, even her TikTok routines seemed like dramatic reenactments, straight from a true crime docuseries.
A beautiful name, Isis.
Ellen's rough. That's
Ellen
a
is
rough
like
one.
an old.
But it's a rough one now.
It's a rough one now because she was running Abu Ghraib in the back of her show. That's a rough one. She's out there dancing with Kristen Bell, and in the back, there's people that are getting up on the rack like this.
It's so weird when you see, like, a lot of people saying that someone who seems so nice is
Yeah.
not nice at all.
She does.
Countless allegations surfaced last summer that the show's work environment was rife with harassment and discrimination. Following those charges, Ellen's ratings dropped faster than Kevin Spacey's pants at a boy.
Be kind, she often said. Yet behind the scenes, some described a work environment that felt more like an emotional maze. Ellen, once beloved for her warmth and humor, may have been running a set that felt less friendly and more intense. It turns out, the secret to that polished daytime charm may have involved a lot more pressure than expected. Some even claimed the atmosphere made interns feel invisible, trying to stay out of the way rather than shine.
Business. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, because I'm mean. Yeah. Yeah, you can't be mean and be in show business.
But fear not. America's unlikely media investigators stepped in. Joe Rogan, whose podcast is known for bold conversations, and Greg Gutfeld, Fox's sharp-witted late-night voice, teamed up with their signature sarcasm. Their attention turned to Ellen, and suddenly, her cheerful stage began to feel more like the waiting room of a very tense office. Their commentary added a layer of dry humor that made audiences take a second look at what once seemed like harmless daytime fun.
Seem nice, but that people have a very poor judge of character. She doesn't seem nice. It seems forced. People that are like that all the time, she doesn't seem nice. It's very forced. And whatever, you're allowed to be a bitch, right? You're allowed to be a bitch. You're allowed to be nasty to people. You're accomplished. You're a comedian. You did the whole thing. What you're not allowed to do is have a Guantanamo Bay situation in the backstage of your show where everybody's walking around.
Ellen used to represent nice in its most polished form, until that idea started to feel more scripted than sincere. Behind the charm were rumors of silent tension and unspoken rules. Stories swirled: don't make eye contact, don't speak unless invited, and even then, hope it's the right moment. Interns were reportedly treated more like background props than young creatives. Ironically, many of them brought more energy than the fake plants decorating the corners of the studio.
DeGeneres, bails for the UK. All right. I'm going to go to you first, Kat, because this is I think you understand this story. So Ellen and her wife, Portia, have left their millionaire haven of Montecito for England. Now, they're saying they'll never come back in the wake of Trump's win. Do you think that's the reason why she's leaving?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, Ellen got canceled for real a few years ago from just being a jerk.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like a single comment she said or something she did, just lots of people saying that working for her was a living nightmare and that she's a jerk. And I think that's probably why she wants to leave, because she hasn't really been able.
When Joe Rogan heard the stories, you could almost picture his eyebrows rise in disbelief. Known for interviewing astronauts, alien theorists, and people who eat elk hearts for breakfast, Rogan suddenly found himself unpacking scented candle controversies and celebrity drama. Naturally, Greg Gutfeld wasn't far behind, offering his usual sarcastic flair. He treated the whole situation like a gourmet dish of irony, comparing it to a gluten-free cake Ellen might have launched across the set after someone forgot the oat milk.
progress with this strike?
They're picketing right now, so I think it's the early stages. I would think it might take a little bit with this one.
When someone crosses the writer strike, that's some dirty shit. They cross the picket line.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody doing that yet.
I think Ellen did. I had a buddy of mine who was writing on Ellen. Everybody kind of knows now what she's really all about. And that's another one of those. Like, press. I'm so nice and I'm so sweet.
Ellen's success was built on quirky charm and feel-good moments. She danced, handed out gifts, and became a household favorite by spreading joy. But behind the scenes, things weren't always as cheerful. Some former staff members described their experiences as stressful and emotionally draining. Allegations painted the set more like a high-pressure environment than a lighthearted workplace. Rogan, who's interviewed everyone from scientists to survivalists, was taken aback that someone known for joy could allegedly foster such discomfort. And Gutfeld? He zeroed in on the irony, finding humor in the collapse of a carefully curated image. To Fox News, nothing's more amusing than a cheery image cracking under pressure.
I was quitting, I would have not come back this year. I really did think about not coming back because it did, it was devastating. I am a kind person. I am a person who likes to make people happy.
No, the real reason, she says, is it was just too easy. Telling the Hollywood Reporter, quote, when you're a creative person, you constantly need to be challenged. And as great as this show is, and as fun as it is, it's just not a challenge anymore. Well, if that's true, here's an idea. When your viewership is down 43%, why not consider that the challenge?
Yes, this is the same Ellen who championed kindness in her opening monologues, yet was later accused of disciplining staff for taking medical leave. That contrast didn't go unnoticed. It felt more like a workplace paradox than a progressive platform. Even Gutfeld, known for his punchy wit, paused to wonder if kindness should come without staplers flying or interns ducking out of frame. Then came the moment that stunned fans. Ellen laughing alongside former President George W. Bush at a football game. For many, it felt like a sharp turn, a progressive icon sharing laughs with a controversial political figure. Rogan, unfazed, treated it like just another strange twist in celebrity culture. Gutfeld, on the other hand, likely saw it as the ultimate irony. A Hollywood liberal enjoying laughs with a Republican president. It was, in his eyes, the kind of contrast that writes its own punchlines.
Become successful, you have to spend less time with people around you because you're servicing, take Ellen DeGeneres, she's servicing millions of people in her show, therefore she has to kind of like mitigate or control the amount of exposure with actual real people. Does that make sense?
It does in theory, but when you, but I'm still always hanging out on the street and I'm super famous. But all these reports, there were so many of them, of people being like, multiple people had the same story of her handlers, before an interview or anything with her, would come up and say.
In response to the backlash, Ellen tried to smooth things over. "I'm friends with everyone," she said, hoping to diffuse the situation. But to many, it sounded less like inclusion and more like deflection. When both Rogan and Gutfeld agree something seems off, it's a sign the narrative may have shifted. And then came the public apology, Ellen standing before her team after the workplace controversy erupted. The carefully worded speech, though intended to heal, felt more scripted than sincere. Her staff appeared quiet and emotionally drained, and the moment resembled a scene out of corporate drama rather than true reflection. Meanwhile, Gutfeld relished the moment, seeing it as the unraveling of a once unshakable TV image. And Rogan? He likely processed it from his sensory tank, noting once again that authenticity often comes from comedians and unfiltered moments, not polished PR speeches. Because when kindness becomes part of a branding campaign, it risks losing the very meaning it's supposed to represent.
Told the Today Show, home of Matt Lauer, that the bad press actually had nothing to do with her decision. Right, and the Titanic didn't hit an iceberg.
There's something almost poetic about the final curtain call on Ellen's carefully crafted world of cheer. That trademark smile. It started to feel less like pure joy and more like a forced expression from a toothpaste commercial. Her show looked picture perfect. Clean sets, pastel colors, and fans cheering over free kitchen gadgets. But behind the scenes, it reportedly resembled more of a high-pressure environment fueled by subtle tension and overpriced matcha. Each episode opened with Ellen dancing through the audience like she had personally discovered happiness, arms swinging with unpredictable rhythm. Yet, according to backstage whispers, those same audience members were warned not to make a sound near her dressing room. It was like performing a cheerful dance inside a house quietly catching fire. And of course, Gutfeld took aim at that contrast, likely grinning ear to ear while pointing out the cracks in the polished image. For him, it was comedy gold. As for Rogan, he laughed it off. When your daily routine includes extreme diets and sci-fi theories, a daytime show's PR stumble is just background noise.
Emily, I watched her comedy special. It was like a huge pity party. It was about how she was lamenting how her reputation has suffered. She's essentially as popular as a pit bull with monkeypox, but she's putting this on Trump. Do you think that she's going to be just everybody's going to love her in England?
Especially the jihadis who love the lesbians so much. They're going to love her.
Ellen's attempts to fix the situation only seemed to deepen the damage. She changed producers, delivered more emotional monologues, and tried to reclaim her reputation as the nice lady. But by then, it was like trying to put a piñata back together after the candy had already spilled. The illusion was gone. The audience had already seen behind the curtain. Gutfeld had a field day, calling it the fall of a talk show empire. Only this one wore sneakers and played party games with celebrities. Rogan compared the unraveling to a confusing experience, a loss of ego without any real reflection, but with plenty of legal issues. Even her celebrity interviews felt awkward, with some guests seemingly uncomfortable, their laughter sounding more rehearsed than real. Ellen's on-screen charm began to resemble that of a character from a teen drama, rather than a genuine host. Rogan once had a calm conversation with Mike Tyson and left unharmed, yet even he seemed wary of Ellen's playful roasting. And Gutfeld. He didn't hold back, joking that if Ellen wore a red hat and mustache, she'd face instant cancellation. Dance. Breaks or not.
St. Patrick's Day, and Ellen asked me to dress as a leprechaun and come out on stage. And this is where, if you're wondering the low point of my career.
When you say she asked me, you're like, this is not a request.
It wasn't a request. I had to do it.
Yeah. You're doing this.
When you make an employee get in a leprechaun outfit and he's Irish, that's just cruel. That's racism.
Yeah.
I think that, why wouldn't that be? Think about other races. Would you have taken a Chinese employee on the Chinese New Year and put him in one of those big pagoda hats and made him dance to gong?
Even Ellen's humor started to shift. What once felt like lighthearted teasing began to resemble subtle jabs dressed up as jokes. When the audience hesitates before laughing, it stops feeling funny and starts feeling uncomfortable. Somewhere, Gutfeld likely sipped from a mug labeled, "I told you so." Watching as one of daytime TV's biggest personalities slowly became the punchline. For him, it was the payoff after years of calling out Hollywood's contradictions. Rogan? He probably added Ellen to his mental list of strange phenomena, somewhere between novelty trends and unexpected controversies. When someone's public image unravels faster than their audience's polite applause, it's time to reevaluate the message. Her comeback efforts didn't help much either. A vague podcast here, a lifestyle brand there. It all felt like another attempt at rebranding without real change. Rogan, never one for surface-level branding, likely stayed far from the merchandise. Gutfeld may have bought a candle just to crack jokes on air. Smells like lavender, guilt, and unpaid overtime. Ellen didn't lose her reputation over one mistake. It was the weight of too many genuine moments that didn't hold. Up over time.
There's no coming back from this. Ellen DeGeneres has seemingly vanished from public life after years of dominating daytime television, leaving many wondering what really went on behind the scenes. Recently, Joe Rogan mentioned Greg Fitzsimmons, who was one of her former writers during a podcast, but what many people missed was Greg already opening up about his experiences working on the show in a previous interview, and let's just say it's not all rainbows and...
Ellen DeGeneres built her career on the idea that every day felt like a cheerful holiday inside a tech showroom. Bright, bouncy, and perfectly choreographed. But underneath all the sparkle, the warmth many expected turned out to be missing. What looked like kindness sometimes felt more like a tightly managed brand. Behind the scenes, the workplace was described by some as high-strung and anxiety-inducing. Staffers reportedly had to avoid eye contact, stay silent, and tread carefully around her. It was less like a TV set and more like a carefully controlled environment. The dancing? More awkward than inspiring. Each performance began to resemble a pre-social media meme in motion. And those interviews? They occasionally felt more scripted than sincere. The show promised surprises and joy, but much of it was said to be rehearsed and heavily produced. Ellen seemed like the fun relative on screen, but behind closed doors, stories suggested otherwise. Her fall wasn't sudden, it was the result of years of contradictions quietly building. Rogan and Gutfeld didn't create the controversy. They simply highlighted what had been there all along. Once the spotlight shifted, what was revealed wasn't a misunderstood icon, but a performer whose image no longer matched reality. So yes, choose kindness, but make sure it's the real kind, not just the televised version.